Hey everybody, welcome to the Son of Wonder YouTube channel. Today I'll be going through all the important D23 announcements, least important to me, ones that I care about, ones that were actually announcements that actually added something new, like hey, we didn't know that, instead of just reminders that something is already happening that we knew about. So we will be going over that with you, so let's conversationalize. Alright everybody, we will be starting off with my least excited one, like the one I'm least excited for that doesn't intrigue me that much, to my highest, like the one I am pumped about and cannot wait to see. So, we will be starting off with Werewolf at Night. I have no idea what to make of this. It literally came out of nowhere. They dropped the trailer for it, at D23 of course, and it just... I watched it, it just seems there. I don't even know if I'm going to see it because I'm not really a horror guy, so I don't really do that kind of stuff. And it looks dark both in tone and in lighting, which is kind of funny. It looks like it might pay homage to some of the older, horror stuff and like Dracula and all that, but it also looks really creepy. So yeah, don't really know what to make of it. Probably won't watch it, but I did believe I saw a tease at Man-Thing, the character from the comics. He's essentially like Swamp Thing from DC, except Man-Thing, he actually came first. Man-Thing came before Swamp Thing. But that tease did excite me because I like that character. I like the character of Man-Thing, but other than that, there's not really a lot going on here. There's a werewolf, and he's at nighttime. So, there's that. Alright, next up we have the Thunderbolts casting announcement. So when this project was first announced at Comic-Con, and I heard about it, along with the entire release of Phase 5. I was really excited, actually, for this movie. I was like, hey, the Thunderbolts, because I knew him from the different, cartoons, Marvel cartoons I've watched. The idea is cool, People call it, the Suicide Squad of Marvel. I guess it's kind of like that. So I was excited, but then the casting announcements came up. And I'm not as excited anymore, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wish there were more, I was really loving the idea of Ghost Rider being announced for the Thunderbolts. And it's very possible that they could add more people to the team in the movie. These are just the ones we know about now. But as it stands now, I'm not really that hyped because a lot of the Phase 4 projects I've not really been a fan of, and most of these characters come from Phase 4, or they're just characters that I don't really care about that much. Bucky is really the one that I'm most excited to see again. I really like the Winter Soldier. I also enjoy Yelena from Black Widow. I think she's a hilarious character. She's well written. As far as the script, the actress Florence Pugh has got a lot of charisma as her. And so I like her and I like Bucky, but everybody else is kind of just meh. I'm really not a fan of what they did with Taskmaster and Black Widow. So seeing her again in this movie doesn't really excite me. Also, Ghost from Ant-Man and Wasp, she was, I guess, she was a good villain for the movie. That movie's meant to be very, fun, so it's not really meant to have too much, depth to it. So, she was a, decent villain. I just don't really know if I care to see her again in this team. You also have Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. Again, he's a fun character, but other than Bucky, there's really not anyone that particularly excites me, hey, we get to see that character. Also, of course, you're going to have Julia Louise Dreyfus playing Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, I believe is her name. Her character will also be in that movie. She was introduced, actually, in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then in a post-credit scene for Black Widow. When all that stuff was coming out, I think she was originally meant to be released in Black Widow for the first time in that post-credit scene. But because stuff got switched around, we ended up seeing her in Falcon and the Winter Soldier first. But she seems to be the kind of the Nick Fury of the Thunderbolts, bringing the team together, doing it for, I guess she has superiors. It's assumed that maybe Thunderbolt Ross is going to be the leader of the pack, or the man behind the curtain. But with the unfortunate passing of William Hurt, I don't really know what they're going to do with that, if they're going to recast him, or kind of just mention him as a guy in the background. It'll definitely be interesting to see. I would have loved to have seen Red Hulk, and we still could, but I love William Hurt, and he's the best General Ross to me. Also, though, I did think that it would be kind of cool if they brought back the guy who did General Ross in the 2003 Hulk movie. Even though that movie wasn't very well received, I feel like that guy still looks and probably can play the part of General Ross like he did before. So they could totally recast him in the role. I feel like that might be a good choice. So interesting casting announcements. My excitement level has kind of dipped, unfortunately, for this movie, but we'll see. Moving on to the Captain America New World Order announcement. We have a few new casting announcements. We have Torres from Falcon and Winter Soldier. He will be coming back, the military guy that was helping Falcon do some stuff in Falcon and Winter Soldier. He actually becomes the new Falcon in the comics after Falcon has become Captain America. Kind of complicated. But yes, he became the Falcon of the comics, so it is presumed that he will be Falcon in this movie, the new Falcon. We also have Isaiah Bradley from Falcon and the Winter Soldier returning. He's kind of the old, forgotten super soldier that fought against Hydra. Both of these characters are all right. Both of them, I think they could do some cool stuff with in this movie. I'm not really a fan of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, how they used the characters in that one. And I believe it is the same director. But hopefully they will make better decisions in this new upcoming movie that will make me more invested in these characters and be like, hey, I am excited to see them, rather than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I was kind of disappointed in. But the new casting announcement that I'm most excited for, which I actually mentioned in my recent She-Hulk reviews, is Tim Blake Nelson as the leader. It has been 14 years since we last saw him in the Incredible Hulk movie with Edward Norton as the Hulk, and I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for him to come back and, see what he's been up to, see what happened. Like, his head started to grow, he started to smile in that movie, and that was it. We never knew. And he is returning in this movie as the villain, and I am so excited. Now, I will say, I am a little weirded out that they're going to make the leader the villain of a Captain America movie when he's so prominently a Hulk villain. That is a bit of an odd choice. I still hold out that he's the boss that the Wrecking Crew are referring to in She-Hulk. And honestly, with this new casting announcement and reveal for the Captain America movie, I think that even might hold up even more that he's the boss. They could be, setting him up for this movie, and that would be really good. But it is a little weird that he's the villain of a Captain America movie. I usually like for Hulk villains to stick with, Hulk movies, and Spider-Man villains to stick with Spider-Man movies. Like, I don't usually like for villains to switch heroes in, like, a solo hero movie. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I'm still super excited that he's back. And it's kind of cool because Tim Blake Nelson looks exactly the same as he did 14 years ago. Like, literally nothing has changed he's 14 years older and nothing. So it'll be like he never left, or at least I'm hoping it will. So I am very excited that the leader is coming to the MCU. And I called it. Sort of. I called it for She-Hulk, but it ended up being a completely different project. Moving on, we have Secret Invasion. A story about Nick Fury uncovering some conspiracies about Skrulls who have secretly been people in the government of Earth doing, evil stuff. The trailer dropped for this show, and oh my gosh. I was already excited for the show. I really liked the premise of them actually making the Skrulls the bad guys, like they did in Captain Marvel. Although I will say, it will be interesting seeing Talos from Captain Marvel as a good guy Skrull going up against a bunch of other evil Skrulls. I think it is cool to have a Skrull on Fury's side and fighting other Skrulls. I think that idea in and of itself is neat. And again, the idea of like the Skrulls infiltrating the government and you don't know who's a Skrull, and it's very spy thriller, I love that idea, and the trailer invoked all sorts of seriousness. I mean, it was awesome. And it's nice to have some grounded seriousness. With all of the different stuff these days, I feel like just focusing too much on humor and less on actual good storytelling and serious, grounded, well, maybe not every story has to be grounded, but, serious, meaningful storytelling that has, deep layers to it. So the trailer won me over, and I am super excited for this show. But next up, we have the big one. The second biggest one on this list that I am most excited for, and that is the Mandalorian Season 3. Oh my gosh. I am thrilled and elated about this new trailer, about it coming at all. I am just so excited. And, this trailer really seems to be pushing the idea of Bo-Katan possibly as the villain of this season, which I think is really cool because, in the Clone Wars, in Star Wars The Clone Wars, which I love that series, I've seen most of the animated Star Wars projects. So I've seen Clone Wars, I've seen Rebels, I've seen Bad Batch, I've even seen the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars is, which I highly recommend. I believe they're on Disney Plus. You can go check those out. Those are so good. But the Clone Wars series made by Dave Filoni and George Lucas, Bo-Katan was introduced in that series, and she started out as a bad guy. She was a terrorist who served the Mandalorian clan Death Watch, led by Pre Vizsla, who was the first person we've seen on screen wield the Darksaber. And so she started out there, and they were like, the Death Watch's whole thing was fighting the Duchess of Mandalore, Duchess Satine's pacifistic ideals, and because they believed themselves to be true warriors, and they thought she was, being essentially like a heretic by pushing all these ideals in the Mandalorian culture. So she started out as a bad guy. And what's funny is, if you didn't know, spoilers for Clone Wars and I guess all the shows, they mention it now, but Bo-Katan is actually the sister of Satine. So she started out as a bad guy, but once Darth Maul took over Mandalore, she decided to help Satine and help the good guys and the Jedi fight Maul, and that's like the big ending climax of season 7 of Clone Wars. So she's been a good guy for a long time now. She was also, again, just assume spoilers for everything. She was also featured in Star Wars Rebels, and she was great in that. And obviously one of the most recent things we were reintroduced to her in was Mandalorian season 2. And again, she was great. They had some nice tension because of the Darksaber, and it seems like that tension that they were focusing on at the end of season 2, her driving need to acquire the Darksaber once again, but acquire it honorably and rule Mandalore with the Darksaber, that they seem to be continuing that tension in this trailer. And it's very interesting because she started out as a bad guy, became a good guy for a pretty long time, and then might becoming a bad guy again. And it makes sense because if she already had that darkness inside of her to start out with, and then she's kind of become more and more jaded over war and just wanting to control everything because that's what she feels is best, she's actually going to become a really good bad guy and a better bad guy than she was before, because she was more like a henchman before. But now if she's the main villain of this series, that's actually a really interesting character arc for her, when you know her past and stuff like that. So I'm super excited. We got Mando and the child back, and Mando seems to be on a quest to recover his title as a Mandalorian, which is very interesting because they established that in Book of Boba Fett, and they brought Grogu and Mando back to each other in Book of Boba Fett. And there is a part of me that wonders if that wasn't too early, if it would have been more interesting to just have Mando by himself, facing all of these things in the 3rd season, and still have Grogu training with Luke. But I trust Dave Filoni, I trust Jon Favreau, so we'll see what awesome stuff they have for us. I'm really excited for this next season. But the big one, the coup de grace, the magnum opus, if you will, of what I'm excited for D23 that was announced, or rather not announced, but that was given a trailer, is mainly why I have these specific lightsabers here, is Tales of the Jedi. That trailer, that is the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's just the trailer. I haven't really done any Star Wars videos yet, so it's cool to set all this stuff up and finally focus on some. I got my Kyber crystal necklaces, and I'm so thrilled about this trailer. The most important part of Star Wars to me is the Jedi and the Force and the lightsabers and just focusing on all of their mythology. That's the best part of Star Wars. That's a part I love most, and that's what looks to be in this, what this series is all about. We got backstory for Ahsoka, an arc for her, and we got backstory for Dooku. Now, I've never really been the biggest fan of Count Dooku, but I can't deny that it was going to be insanely interesting, even if they're just shorts, to see what his story was like before he turned to be a Sith Lord. This could make me love the character of Dooku even so much more, because, it's the trailer by itself looks incredibly interesting. And I love Qui-Gon Jinn, and that the fact that we're finally seeing a young Qui-Gon Jinn, it's really just the fulfillment of all the stuff we saw in the prequels and got hints to. That's like, what's that about? What's that about? What's that about? And even in Clone Wars, like, we're finally getting that. That's why I got this, but it's actually, I don't know if you can see it's a clear blade, but it's actually with a blue crystal, because in the trailer, Count Dooku has a blue color for his curved lightsaber, which I assume is the same lightsaber. And again, I'm just excited for that too, because I love different details in lightsabers, and I am just loving every snippet of this trailer. And the main thing that I freaked out at, that I was the most excited for, isn't even the Dooku stuff, isn't even the deep and rich backstory they look like they're going to be exploring on that. It is that new Inquisitor. All I needed to do was see him and see what he looks like, and he is like immediately my favorite Inquisitor. I don't even know his backstory. He's entirely new. I don't know anything about him, and I don't think anybody else does either. I've looked, and it seems like he's completely new, but like his mask, his hood, everything about him just looks so cool. And you know, technically this is the Grand Inquisitor's Inquisitor lightsaber, but I figured it would still be appropriate to put this lightsaber on the table, considering how similar all the Inquisitor's lightsabers are. I would love to look at his closer, just because he is so awesome looking. And his voice is cool and deep and stuff. And like, that's the thing, is I've always wished that they would, like, I'm a fan of the old Republic era of Star Wars too, so I've always wished they would kind of go back there, or, you know, just at any point, just give us a Sith who's like got tattered robes and a hood and a cool, you know, just coolness all over him. I've essentially wanted a Sith Ringwraith from Lord of the Rings. That's essentially what I've wanted. And it looks like they're giving us that, at least somewhat, in the form of this character. His mask almost looks like the beak of a bird. I've heard theories that he could be a Kaleesh warrior. And what was funny is I had like these thoughts in my head a long time ago where I was like, that would be cool if there was like a Kaleesh Inquisitor. And if he is, I'm going to freak out, because my dreams will have become a reality. And you know, just everything about this guy, the red eyes just evokes all the stuff I love about Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings aspect of Star Wars, if you will, where it's like the ancient mythology, the ancient spiritual swords, or like, you know, it's just all that stuff is so cool. And the medieval aspect of Star Wars, and that is what I'm super pumped for in this series. It looks phenomenal. I cannot wait for October 26th. Alright, so we're actually not done yet, because I want this channel to be a little bit more about other things besides DC, Star Wars, and Marvel, even though those are my top 3 universes and I love all of them equally. I'm going to mention, you know, just kind of a few of the Disney projects themselves that were announced that caught my eye. We got this new one called Wish coming out. I believe it's a movie. It says it's going to be like, the animation is going to be experimenting with watercolor and CG, which that sounds very interesting, just the animation style. So with all the new Disney stuff, it's kind of hit or miss what I watch, so I'm not even sure I'm going to be watching it, but I figured it's worth a shout out just because I think that style kind of sounds interesting. So that did intrigue me a little bit. And then we got Little Mermaid. The teaser for that one came out, and as a rule, I'm not really a fan of Disney constantly translating their old animated projects to live action. I feel like, one, it's largely unnecessary because all the animation stuff was so good. In fact, there is a thing on YouTube, Screen Rant does it. They're called pitch meetings. So shout out to the Screen Rant pitch meetings and the guy in them. And what the pitch meetings are is they're essentially a sarcastic review of a certain movie and what happens in a certain movie that is like as if the writer coming to the producer with the script, it's like what they assume, that in a funny way, what they assume they would be saying, like all the ideas kind of sprouting off about like whatever movie we're gonna make, and they're hilarious. In one of them, they joked around but still made a very valid point about how you don't repaint the Mona Lisa with just because we have new paints. That is essentially the summary of my whole argument against the live-action reinterpretations of these movies. Is so many of these are great and classic, and you really don't need to mess with them, but they keep wanting to remake them. And I mean, another problem I have is this: it's kind of just lazy writing. I mean, like, they keep remaking these, and there's no point to do it, and they're kind of just, you know, basing it off stuff that was already done, so they don't even have that much more work to do. And so it's kind of a waste of talent and potential. just, spending it all on stuff that's already been made and already done well. The most recent Disney live-action remake was Pinocchio, and that was kind of an exception to the rule for me because Robert Zemeckis directed it, and Tom Hanks was in it, and I love both of those people, so I was pretty excited for that movie. And it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. It didn't have the magic I expected it to have, but it was still a decent watch. And, the old Pinocchio I like, but kind of had a creep factor to it, although this one kind of had the same thing in some ways, so it didn't change a whole lot of that. But still, I thought it was a decent watch, but it wasn't really great. But as far as this Little Mermaid teaser goes, again, not really a fan of them constantly feeling they need to reinterpret it. I watched the teaser. The undersea stuff looks really pretty, and the girl's voice is nice as Ariel. But again, it seems pointless to me. Moving on, Pixar announced that there'd be an Inside Out 2. And Inside Out is actually a really good Pixar movie. I really enjoy it. Every time I watch it, I obviously get pretty emotional, especially in the part where, spoiler alert, where Bing Bong dies. Which is what I, laughed at in the first episode of She-Hulk, if you watch my review of that one, when they mentioned it there. Because I can relate to it because it was so sad. And so that movie was really good, and I enjoyed that one. So the idea of a 2, I think has potential to it. There are some movies that you just should not perform sequels. You should just leave alone. And this movie, I feel like if they do it right, they can make a really good sequel, but I don't know if I entirely trust them to do it right. But we'll see. It could be really good. It could be really bad. We'll have to watch. But the one that looks actually the most interesting to me, out of all the Disney stuff, and the one was Pixar, but is Disenchanted. I really do love the first Enchanted movie. I think that movie is such a fun ride. And Amy Adams does a phenomenal job at being this naive princess from an animated world. And just so much great acting talent in that movie. So much about that movie I just absolutely love. It never came into my mind, though, like, hey, they should make a 2. It never was at the forefront of my brain. I may have thought about it like once, because I usually, so many times I think, I wonder if this movie got a sequel or whatever. But we are getting a sequel. And the trailer definitely was not what I expected. Amy Adams' character is very innocent and fun in the first Enchanted movie, but it looks like they're almost making her the villain of this movie. And generally plot lines where the main premise of the movie is getting this one person to realize they're wrong or whatever don't really intrigue me. It's kind of similar to the Alice Through the Looking Glass live-action sequel to the first live-action Alice in Wonderland they did, which I love the first one, but the second one was kind of it kind of had that same thing, like they're trying to get people to realize stuff, and it's kind of a very simple plot line, and I'm not really a big fan of those type of sequels, and that might look like what this one's going to be, but it still looks like it has a very interesting edge, and I probably will check it out just because I'm really curious to see where these characters are going from there. But some tidbits of other news. There is a Captain America Black Panther video game coming out, which the teaser actually looked really good, so I'm kind of curious about that one. They had panels for Echo and Daredevil Born Again, and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and Wakanda Forever, and the Marvels, and apparently they released footage for multiple of those projects, which they did not reveal to the public. The only Marvel trailers we got were Werewolf by Night and Secret Invasion. So I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't release more about those movies, like trailers or something. And the main thing I'm most disappointed about, that I have a feeling a lot of you are, is the fact that they did not reveal the Fantastic Four casting announcements. What's up with that? I feel like making us wait a whole other year to see who the new Fantastic Four are going to be is cruel. And so, yeah, I'm very disappointed in that. I'm also disappointed that we didn't really get any X-Men news. Like, if they're going to be an X-Men movie, or if there's, like, casting announcements for who's going to be Professor X or whatever. There were recent talks about Giancarlo Esposito saying that he might do it. I would be totally down for that, but they haven't announced anything. And so I am very bummed that we have to wait even longer to hear who's all going to be in that stuff. The thing they did announce for Fantastic Four, though, is that Matt Shakman, the director of WandaVision, will be directing the movie. And WandaVision, for me, was great for 8 episodes. The 9th one pretty much ruined the whole thing for me. No payoff, or at least none that was good. So I was pretty disappointed in that show just because of the ending. And I mean, the style that he chose for that show, again, for the 8 episodes, was really cool, and I think they did a phenomenal job recapturing the sitcoms. And if he can bring some of that style to kind of freshen up the Fantastic Four, that could be really cool. The main thing I'm concerned about is the ending and the climax of the film. This guy, when it comes to endings and climaxes, at least for me, has not had the greatest track record as far as his Marvel stuff is concerned, even though he's only done one project. So I am hopeful about his directing when it comes to this movie. But I'm very excited for this movie, and I need them to announce that John Krasinski is Mr. Fantastic and Emily Blunt is Sue Storm. That's all, folks. Goodbye. I'm kidding. But anyway, that's the main thing I want for that movie. Echo, they released some new footage, said some stuff. Quantumania, they released some new footage, said some stuff. So they did that with a lot of the projects on the Marvel slate that are set to come out fairly soon. And Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox got to be on a panel together for Daredevil Born Again, kind of just talking about, they apparently haven't even started filming yet, but they're kind of just saying that they're glad to be back and all that. And I am super into the Daredevil Netflix series that I've been recently watching. It has been a phenomenal show. And I am excited at the prospect of this series. However, I am slightly concerned because there have been things that have been said that might suggest it's like a complete reboot. And I really hope it's not that, because I feel like it would be entirely pointless to act like the history of Kingpin and Daredevil is not there. Like, act like the history never happened, even with the same actors playing these characters. I really hope I really hope they just say that the Daredevil Netflix series happened in the MCU, and we can all rest our eyes at nighttime and then pass out without being concerned about that stuff. There's even been hints in the Daredevil series itself that it did happen in the MCU. People talking about like stuff that happened in New York, a connection to the alien invasion of 2012 in the first Avengers movie. One guy even mentions a guy with a hammer and a guy in an iron suit. So, I mean, it would be perfect to be in the MCU. There's really nothing hindering it from being in the MCU. Maybe other than like the dramatic, serious tone of that show and then the, lighter tone that the MCU has had. But I mean, the MCU has had a dark tone before, so I think it's totally fair for this show to exist in the MCU. And I'm not sure if it's the same writers and directors. I don't believe it is for this new series, so that also concerns me, because so much of, a good show is because of the writing and directing. In fact, all of a good show is because of the writing and directing. You can have Tom Hanks be in your movie, who's like one of the greatest actors to ever live, and give him a bad script and write him a bad story, and the movie's still not going to be very good, even though he's in it. So that's my concern for that show. But again, I'm optimistic about it. Echo, I'm also optimistic about. I like to have optimism for so many of this new Marvel content coming out, even though She-Hulk has kind of, and its many attempts to dampen my optimism. We'll see about all the stuff. Again, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about so many of these new projects. I'm especially excited for the Star Wars new projects. Boom, baby, we're getting stuff. And, October is going to be a fun month because we got Andor and Tales of the Jedi coming out. And so my family's very excited. I'm very excited. And, a lot of the projects I'm pumped for. Some of them I'm about, and others I'm like, please don't do that. And so we'll let that be the ending of this video. Thank you guys for watching my D23 announcement breakdown, at least the D23 breakdown of the stuff I was interested in, of the stuff I felt worthy to be reviewed. And so thank you guys for watching. May the Lord be with you, may the Force be with you, and have a very blessed day. Goodbye.